There's a certain kind of silence that only comes when the world shifts beneath your feet, but no one else notices. A silence so loud it drowns out the roar of aircraft engines, the static of the radio, the barked orders echoing off concrete. For me, that silence arrived inside a tent, halfway across the world, in the middle of a desert I couldn't name. It started with a ping. One little sound on my military-issued laptop, an email notification. I clicked without thinking. Just another report, another schedule update. But it wasn't. The subject line hit me harder than any explosion I'd heard in 15 years of service. Let's be adults about this. 3 sentences. 13 years of marriage. Gone in 3 heartless lines of cold text. She'd filed for divorce. She'd emptied our joint account. And she'd moved her new boyfriend into our house in Asheville. No tears. No explanation. Not even a goodbye. Just facts, like checking off a grocery list. I stared at the screen long after I finished reading. My name is Logan Mitchell, Master Sergeant, U.S. Air Force, deployed in Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar. And in that moment, I wasn't a soldier. I was a husband left behind, not physically but emotionally erased. I closed the laptop. I didn't say a word. Not to my commanding officer. Not to the guys bunked around me. I walked to the communal showers, let the hot water run down my back, and tried to breathe. Not feel. Just breathe. That night, I sat on my cot, typed a 1-word reply. Understood. And I meant it, not because I accepted what she did, but because I understood what was coming, and what I'd need to become to survive it. You see, Claire didn't just leave me. She detonated our life. She stripped it bare while I was over here putting my life on the line, thinking I had someone waiting for me, someone who would never, ever do this. But I was wrong. So damn wrong. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't cry. I just lay there staring at the thin tent ceiling, replaying the last year like a surveillance reel in my mind. The signs were there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Claire had started going out more, saying she needed space, needed time with friends. She joined a new gym but never broke a sweat. Her work hours at the wellness clinic kept getting later. Passwords on her phone changed. Conversations became shorter, colder, like I was slowly fading from her eyes, from her world. Still, I loved her. God help me, I did. But I'm not stupid. Not anymore. About 6 months before deployment, my instincts kicked in. Quietly, carefully. I started preparing, not because I expected betrayal, but because a man in my line of work doesn't survive long by ignoring his gut. I rented a small storage unit across town. Inside, I placed everything that still meant something to me. My father's watch, the flag from his funeral, the silver coins from my grandfather, our marriage license, birth certificates, and the deed to our house, which thankfully had only my name on the mortgage due to my VA loan. I also opened a new bank account in a different state. Nothing flashy, just a trickle of my paycheck redirected there, enough to start over if I ever had to. I didn't tell Claire. I told myself I was just being cautious, that I was overthinking. Now I know. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being prepared. I remember the last time I saw her. She hugged me at the airport, but it felt off, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker she didn't particularly like. Be safe, she said, with those empty eyes. And then she turned and walked away. Didn't even look back. She was already gone then. I just hadn't seen it yet. The first few days after the email, I went on like nothing had happened. Woke, up, ate rations, ran drills, cleaned weapons, led my team through routine patrols. I did everything I'd always done. But inside, something had cracked. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was deeper. Colder. It was the beginning of the man I would have to become. 1 week later, I got a notification from the bank app I forgot to disable. Another withdrawal. $82,000 gone. That was almost everything left after the initial wipeout. There was $130,000 in that account when I left. Now only $4,300 remained. And the transfer? It went to an account I didn't recognize. Not ours. Not one we'd opened together. I didn't shout. Didn't scream. I just stopped eating. For 3 days, one of my team members, Sergeant Knox, noticed. "You good, sir?" he asked quietly during evening chow. "Just stuff back home," I muttered. He nodded, said nothing more. That's how it is with guys like us. We don't pry unless it's life or death. That night I stared at our old photos, Claire and me smiling on the beach in Miami. That weekend in Colorado, where we hiked until sunset. I stared at the woman who'd once made me believe I was more than a uniform, who now had stripped away not just our marriage, but everything we'd built. Sitting in my recliner, sipping whiskey from my glass, wearing my hoodie. My dog, Hunter, curled up beside him. Then Claire walked in, kissed him on the cheek. They laughed. The same laugh she used to reserve for me. I clicked off the screen. That was the moment something changed in me. The grief? Gone. Replaced by something harder, sharper. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was focus, strategy, a plan. Because I may not have seen this coming, but I damn well wasn't going to let it finish me. That night, I opened a blank notebook. Page 1, I wrote. Mission, take my life back. Step 1, contact Tessa, a military friend who became a lawyer after Iraq. Step 2, review property laws in North Carolina. Step 3, pull my credit report. Step 4, track every withdrawal, every signature, every lie. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to confront her. I was going to outmaneuver her. She thought she'd left a soldier behind. What she didn't know was that she'd awakened the part of me that never, ever loses. And the best part? She wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. If this story is gripping, you already, I promise. It's only just begun. Subscribe to the channel to follow this unbelievable journey to the very end. Your support helps us bring more true, raw, and emotional stories to light. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Quiz time. What do you think hurt Logan more? A. Losing the money. B. Watching another man live in his home with his wife. Comment A or B down below and tell us why. Your voice matters here. There's a particular clarity that sets in after the storm. Not the kind that brings peace or relief, but the kind that strips away anything that isn't necessary. That was what I felt in the days after watching Derek, a man I'd never met, sit comfortably in my home, using my things, laughing with my wife. Claire, the woman who had once clung to me at the airport before my first deployment like I was the only thing anchoring her to this world. Now she was the one who had unmoored me. But here's the thing. Betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. And what it revealed about me was this. I don't quit. I don't collapse. And I don't lose. At first, I didn't know what to do. Revenge wasn't my instinct, at least not in the way people usually think of it. I wasn't going to show up at my front door screaming. I wasn't going to vandalize my own house or call Claire with threats. That's not how you win. That's not how you come back from something like this. You win by knowing more, doing more, staying 2 moves ahead. So I started digging. There's a rhythm to military life, even when everything is falling apart. You learn to function in chaos. Every night after my shift, I'd go back to my bunk and spend hours tracing threads, paper trails, email patterns, bank statements, mortgage documents. I wasn't a detective, but I'd been trained to gather intel under pressure. And this time, the battlefield was my own life. One night, I found what I didn't even realize. I was looking for a new loan, $285,000. The refinance of our home had been approved just 2 months after I deployed. On paper, it had my name on it, my signature, but it wasn't mine. The forgery was close. Whoever did it had studied my handwriting. But there were things they couldn't replicate. The wrong middle initial, the spacing off by a millimeter. And I knew this wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was deliberate, calculated. She forged my name. She took out a loan against a house I built from the ground up, financially and literally. I'd renovated every inch of that place with my own hands, painted the kitchen during a long weekend, installed the deck with a buddy who owed me a favor. And now, she'd gambled it all away. That's when I knew I couldn't do this alone. I called Tessa. Tessa and I met during my second tour in Iraq. She was sharp, calm under fire, the kind of person you wanted watching your back. After the service, she went to law school on the GI Bill. We hadn't talked in over a year, but when she picked up the phone, it was like no time had passed. "You okay?" she asked, her voice low but alert. "No," I said. "But I will be. I need help." I told her everything. The email, the money, the house, the forged loan. "Start sending me documents," she said. "Everything you have. This isn't just a divorce. It's fraud." That word, fraud. It stuck in my mind like a thorn. Claire hadn't just walked away from our marriage. She'd committed a felony. And not just that, she'd done it while I was serving overseas. If there's one thing this country still takes, seriously, it's messing with someone on active duty. Tessa started digging too. She called in favors, pulled records, and what she found made my stomach turn. Derek had a record. It wasn't easy to find. It had been sealed in another state. But it was there. Domestic disturbance in 2016, DUI in 2018, and in 2019, a fraud charge that got pled down to a misdemeanor. The man now living in my house wasn't just an opportunist. He was experienced. He knew what he was doing. And so did Claire. The way the loan was structured, the way the funds were moved, it had all the signs of a well-practiced operation. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. This was a scheme. But there was something they hadn't counted on. Me. They thought I'd be too far away, too distracted, too broken to fight back. They didn't know me at all. The more I learned, the calmer I became. Anger gives you tunnel vision. Focus gives you power. So I got strategic. I called the bank that had issued the refinance and scheduled a phone appointment with their fraud division. I spoke with a man named Arlen who, to his credit, listened carefully when I explained what had happened. He asked for identification, handwriting samples, old mortgage documents. I sent everything. I didn't hear back for 5 days. But when I did, Arlen's voice was tense. "We've reviewed the signature against your official ID and previous records," he said. "There are discrepancies. I've escalated this to our internal investigation unit." "Good," I said, "because I'm just getting started." That same week, I contacted the Veterans Affairs Office. My military benefits were tied to that house. The loan was backed by my service record, my deployments, my credit. They had a right to know someone had tried to abuse the system. They flagged it immediately. I was told it might become a federal matter. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I got another alert from the security system. Claire wasn't alone anymore. Not just Derek. A new face appeared. A man in a sport coat, walking through my living room with a clipboard, taking pictures. Claire was following him around, gesturing at the walls, the kitchen, the windows. It didn't take long to figure out who he was. Marcus Thorne. Real estate agent. I checked his license online, looked up his recent listings, did a deep dive into his business connections. And guess what? He'd worked with Derek before, at least twice, both times selling homes that had been in joint ownership during contentious divorces, both times selling them below market value to cash buyers, both times the sellers, wives of deployed servicemen. This wasn't random. It was a pattern. I sat on my bunk that night, alone with my laptop and the weight of all I'd uncovered. My marriage hadn't failed. It had been hijacked, and this wasn't just about Claire anymore. It was about every man and woman who'd ever deployed thinking they were leaving their home in safe hands, only to come back to find the locks changed and their future stolen. Made a promise to myself right then. I was going to expose all of it. The lies, the theft, the people profiting off the destruction of others, not out of vengeance, but because no one else should go through what I was going through. Not ever again. The next morning I sent Tessa everything I'd found. She was silent for a long time before replying. "This is bigger than you know," she said, "and I think it's time we bring in someone else." "Who?" I asked. "The feds." I didn't flinch. I didn't hesitate. I just said, "Do it," because some things are worth fighting for. And when someone tries to destroy the life you've built, the only thing left to do is rebuild it, on your own terms. They thought they'd broken me. They were wrong. They'd just given me a reason to rise. And I wasn't coming back quietly. The morning I landed back in the States, the sky was overcast, low-hanging clouds casting everything in a dull, gray haze, the kind of weather that matched the weight in my chest. There was no one waiting for me at the airport, no flags, no welcome signs, no wife to throw her arms around me. Just silence and the hum of baggage carousels and half-hearted small talk from strangers who had no idea that everything I once called home had been dismantled while I was across the world serving it. I didn't go home. Instead, I rented a room, under a different name in a small roadside motel just outside Asheville. It was the kind of place people stayed when they didn't want to be found. The curtains were heavy and thick, the walls smelled faintly of mildew and cheap soap, and the front desk clerk didn't ask questions. That's exactly what I needed. From there, I began watching everything. I didn't need to knock on my own front door to know what was happening behind it. Months earlier, during my last leave, I'd installed a new security system, inside and out. Motion-triggered, cloud-synced, discreet. Claire had probably forgotten all about it or assumed I had, but I hadn't. And now, it became my eyes. Diti. First time I opened the feed, I saw Derek again. My hoodie, my mug, my dog at his feet. I didn't flinch anymore. I'd seen it before, but this time there was something new. He wasn't alone. Marcus Thorne had returned, the real estate agent with the smug smile and smooth voice. He was walking through my living room like he owned the place, clipboard in hand, pointing out features like he was rehearsing a sales pitch. Claire followed closely behind him, arms crossed, nodding like she was in control, as if this wasn't someone else's home, as if I no longer existed. They were staging the house. I tapped into the audio feed. Claire's voice was sharper than I remembered, confident, assertive. "He doesn't even know what's going on," she said. "He's still overseas. It's easier this way." Marcus laughed. "Military guys? They're all the same. Loud bark, no bite. He'll roll over, once we wave a check in front of him." Derek chimed in. "He's too busy playing soldier to care about a house. Let him have his pride. We'll take the rest." There was a pause. Then Marcus said, "We list at $470, accept at $420. Cash offer. Everyone wins." No, not everyone. I leaned back in the motel chair, the vinyl creaking beneath me. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. What I felt wasn't fury, it was precision. A tightening of the lens, a sharpening of focus. The part of me trained to assess, to adapt, to eliminate threats. He had fully stepped forward now. That night, I met Tessa in person for the first time in years. We chose a quiet booth at a diner 2 towns over. She looked tired but composed, her briefcase already open before I sat down. "You weren't exaggerating," she said, sliding a folder toward me. Inside were printed bank records, mortgage documents, and one page that made my stomach clench. A scan of the refinance application, with my forged signature. It was slanted, slightly off-center, the G in Logan curling upward instead of inward. A small thing, but unmistakable. "She signed this pretending to be you," Tessa said. "And that's a felony, not to mention the misrepresentation on the loan application. Derek's listed as a co-applicant." I didn't speak, just kept staring at the document, my name twisted into something false. "They're using your identity to drain your future," she said gently. "But we have a case, a strong one." I looked up. "Then let's make it stronger." The next day, I drove to the bank that processed the refinance. I didn't schedule an appointment, just walked in wearing a clean shirt and the quiet confidence that comes from being armed with truth. I asked for the loan officer who signed off on the refinance. A man named Wells, mid-50s, thinning hair, the kind of face that tries to smile but always seems nervous. I showed him my military ID. Then, I handed him my driver's license with my real signature. "This," I said, "is mine." Then I pulled out the forged application. "This is not." He paled immediately. His hands trembled slightly as he compared the 2 pages. I need to call this in," he said. "I've already filed a police report," I told him. "And the Veterans Affairs Office is involved. So is a private attorney. But I thought you might want to be part of fixing this before it gets any worse." A car pulled up, the logo of a real estate company printed on its door. Marcus Thorne stepped out, clipboard in hand. Derek followed from inside, his sleeves rolled up. They shook hands, exchanged a few pleasantries, then walked into my home. Tessa glanced at me. "We going in?" I shook my head. "No need." I opened the security app on my phone, turned up the volume, and tilted the screen toward her. Inside, Marcus was pacing the living room, holding his phone up to take pictures. Derek stood nearby, arms crossed. "We list by the end of the week," Marcus said. "I've got a buyer interested already. Cash offer as usual." "How much?" Derek asked. $420. "We list at $470, they come in at $420. Everybody wins." "And what about Logan?" Derek's voice had a sarcastic edge. "You think he's just going to vanish?" Marcus didn't flinch. Military guys are all the same. Tough, on the outside. But once they're faced with lawyers and paperwork, they fold. He'll take a settlement to make it go away. "He's making noise," Derek said. "The bank, the lawyer, Claire says he's causing trouble." Marcus waved a hand. "He's got deployment obligations, PTSD baggage, a pension to protect. Trust me, he doesn't want a legal war. He wants peace." I turned to Tessa. "You getting this?" She didn't answer. She was already recording the screen with her phone. I sent the footage directly to Agent Lawrence with the subject line, "Happening now." What came next unfolded quickly. Within 30 minutes, 3 unmarked black SUVs rolled into the neighborhood. From our angle across the street, we saw the agents exit the vehicles with practiced efficiency. No rushing, no yelling. Just calm, prepared motion. Marcus and Derek didn't even make it to the front door. They were arrested right there, on my lawn. I watched as handcuffs clicked around their wrists. Derek looked stunned. Marcus looked furious, shouting something about misunderstanding and legality. But no one was listening to him anymore. The agents already had everything they needed, and more. And then, as if the story had been scripted for irony, Claire returned. She pulled into the driveway and stepped out of her car, phone in hand. She froze the moment she saw the agents. Her face dropped as she spotted Derek in cuffs. The clipboard from Marcus's hand lay abandoned on the porch steps. One of the agents turned to her, holding up a hand to stop her advance. She didn't resist, just stood there, mouth open, breath caught, watching her life unravel right where she stood. I didn't move. I didn't approach. I didn't need to. Tessa said softly, "This is your moment." But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like watching the last scene of a movie I didn't want to be in, the kind where no one claps at the end. The kind where the only thing left to do is get up and walk out of the theater into the quiet of night, wondering how it ever got this far. Later, that evening, I met with the FBI at their field office. Agent Lawrence and a woman named Agent Keene sat across from me, a stack of files between us. We're charging Marcus Thorne and Derek Whitman with wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, and attempted theft from a federally backed mortgage, Keene said. "And Claire?" I asked. Agent Lawrence looked at his notes. "We're still determining her level of involvement. There's enough to suggest she participated in the fraud, especially with the forged signature, but her direct role in the wider scheme is still being reviewed." "Did she know what they were doing?" I asked again. She signed the paperwork. She received the transfers. But she may have been manipulated. We've seen that before. Women drawn into financial schemes by men who promise security, love, or an escape. Sometimes they're victims. Sometimes they're co-conspirators. Right now, it's hard to tell. I sat there, feeling the heaviness settle over me again. She was still my wife, at least for now. And despite everything, I didn't want to see her go to prison, unless she'd truly been a willing participant. I leaned forward. I want full restitution. I want the house back. I want her to sign over any claim to my pension, and I want a formal confession about the forgery. In exchange, I won't press criminal charges. Agent Keene nodded. We can facilitate that. Within the week, Claire signed the papers. I didn't speak to her, didn't ask why. I didn't need another apology that meant nothing. What mattered was the finality of it all. She admitted to forging my name. She admitted to receiving stolen funds. She walked away without a trial, but she walked away with nothing. And I walked away with my dignity. There was no cheering, no revenge speech, no final confrontation on a windswept hilltop. Just truth, just justice. And in that, I found something I didn't expect. Peace. They'd thought I was just another name. On a deed. Another uniform with a shadowed home and a distracted mind. Another man too far away to notice the pieces falling apart until it was too late. But what they didn't count on was that I'd never stopped watching, and I'd never stopped fighting. They walked right into the trap they set for me, and I watched every step. Some endings don't come with final words. No slammed doors. No last-minute apologies. They just stop, quietly, like a song fading out instead of finishing on a chord. That's what it felt like when the last paper was signed, and Claire, after 13 years of marriage, betrayal, and loss, was no longer my wife. No more claims to my home, no ties to my name, just a hollow space where once a future had lived. I sold the house 2 months later, not because I needed the money, but because I couldn't stand to breathe that air anymore. Every wall, every floorboard, every creaking stair was soaked in memories that no longer belonged to me. It wasn't a home. It was a monument to what I'd lost. Worse, to what had been taken from me by people who'd looked me in the eye and said they loved me. I didn't leave Asheville right away. I stayed long enough to wrap up the last legal matters, to finalize the logistics of the case. The FBI closed its investigation 3 months after the arrests. Derek Whitman pled guilty to wire fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. 8 years in federal prison. Marcus Thorne received 12 years. Claire? She vanished from the headlines. She moved back to her hometown in Illinois, picked up a job at a dental clinic, and disappeared from my life the same way she had entered it, unexpectedly and without fanfare. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. That surprised me. I had carried hate like a weapon for months, sharpened it every day, thinking it was the only thing keeping me upright. But after it was all over, after the dust settled, I realized something deeply unsettling and strangely comforting. She wasn't worth hating. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean what she did was excusable. It just meant I refused to let the pain define the rest of my story. I bought a small cabin in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of forest. A creek that cut through the back of the land, whispering its way toward something bigger. There was no one around for miles, and that was exactly how I wanted it. The VA pension kept me steady. I didn't need much. I started taking small carpentry jobs for locals, fixing fences, building decks, carving furniture out of rough pine. My hands, once used for holding weapons and steering armored vehicles, now held chisels and sandpaper. It didn't pay much, but it paid just enough, and the quiet, that was priceless. I named my dog Ranger, a black and tan German shepherd I rescued from a shelter outside Spokane. He was skittish at first, nervous around men, especially in uniform. But slowly, day by day, he warmed up. The 2 of us healed together, without words, without ceremony. Just long walks in the woods, and silent companionship beneath the stars. Most nights I sat on the front porch, watching the sunset smear gold and fire across the sky. I didn't think much about Claire. I didn't think much about Derek or Marcus or the courtroom, or the security footage or even the betrayal itself. I thought about the way the trees moved when the wind shifted, about the sound of Ranger breathing at my feet, about how, for the first time in years, no one expected anything from me. I was free. But then, one day, something unexpected arrived in the mail. A letter. It was handwritten, the envelope slightly torn at the edges. The return address read, Fort Worth, Texas. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Neat handwriting. Simple. Sincere. You don't know me, it began. But my name is Anna. My husband James is in the Navy. He was deployed last year when 2 men, Derek Whitman and Marcus Thorne, approached me about selling our home. They said James had authorized it. They had documents. Legal-looking, official. They told me I should trust them. The letter paused here. A visible indentation in the paper, like the writer had pressed the pen down too hard before continuing. But something didn't feel right. I stalled. I started asking questions, and that's when the FBI knocked on my door. They told me I had been a target, but because of you, the case had cracked open. They showed me your name. They said your story helped save a dozen families like mine. I sat there holding the letter, hands trembling. Not with anger, not with sadness, with something heavier, something warmer. Thank you, the letter ended. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to walk away. You didn't just save your home. You saved ours too. I read it twice. Then I pinned it to my refrigerator. It stayed there, because sometimes, when the nights felt too quiet, or when memories crept in uninvited, I needed to remember that something good had come from all of it, that maybe my pain wasn't wasted. Over time, people from town started to know me, not as the man who got betrayed, but as the guy who fixed their fences, built them tables, who didn't talk much, but always showed up when he said he would. They didn't know my past. They didn't need to. Out here, I wasn't Logan the husband, Logan the staff sergeant, Logan the man who'd been taken for everything. I was just Logan. And for the first time, that felt like enough. Tessa and I stayed in touch. She'd moved to D.C. for a federal position in veteran advocacy. Occasionally, we'd catch up over the phone. She told me that more victims had come forward. The web was larger than anyone expected, but because of the evidence I helped provide, the FBI had issued indictments in multiple states. The scam had been running for years, and now it was finally over. Justice had worked. And strangely, that felt like closure too. Sometimes people ask what revenge looks like. They picture explosions, screaming, slamming fists and burning bridges. But that's not it. Real revenge is quiet. It's peace. It's waking up in a bed that no one can take from you. Drinking coffee in a house that's yours in name, deed, and memory. It's looking at yourself in the mirror and knowing you never became what they tried to make you. Claire may have left with half of everything once, but I walked away with all of myself. And that, I've learned, is more than enough. One afternoon, a year after it all ended, I sat by the creek with Ranger, lying next to me, head resting on my boot. The sun was warm, the breeze soft, and I found myself smiling. Not for any big reason. Just because I could. Because I had a life that was mine. Because I wasn't waiting for someone to return my calls, or explain themselves, or love me again. Because, for the first time in a long time, I didn't need anything from anyone. That's what healing looks like. It's not loud. It's not flashy. But it's real. And it lasts. Logan Mitchell's journey began with silence, the kind that doesn't echo, doesn't scream, but instead pierces through the soul like a knife dipped in ice. While deployed overseas in service of his country, he received an email from his wife, Claire, that would alter the course of his life forever. The message was cold, short, and cruel. She had filed for divorce, emptied their joint account, and moved her new boyfriend, Derek, into the home they once built together. No conversation, no remorse, just a digital detonation. But Logan didn't break. Instead of letting anger consume him, he leaned into what the military had trained into his bones: discipline, control, and the art of planning. He remembered the quiet doubts he'd felt in the months leading up to his deployment. The late nights Claire didn't come home, the shift in her tone, the growing emotional distance. And because of that, he had prepared. Separate bank accounts. Legal documents stored away. Ownership of the house secured under his name. What unfolded next wasn't a tale of vengeance. It was a masterclass in resilience. As Logan uncovered more layers, he realized that this wasn't just a personal betrayal. Claire, Derek, and a real estate agent named Marcus Thorne were part of a broader scheme, a system designed to exploit military families. Fraudulent loans, forgeries, quick sale scams that preyed on the deployed and distracted, but they had underestimated the wrong man. Logan didn't fight with fists. He fought with strategy. He recorded, documented, filed, and acted with precision. With the help of Tessa, a former Army friend turned attorney, and later, federal authorities, he handed over the evidence that would crack the case open. Derek and Marcus were arrested. Claire, confronted with the truth, signed over every right to the house and pension, and admitted to forging Logan's name in exchange for avoiding criminal prosecution. But Logan didn't stop there. He chose to start over, not with a desire for revenge, but with the intention to reclaim peace. He sold the house, moved to a quiet cabin in Idaho, and began rebuilding. With his dog Ranger by his side, and the wilderness as his companion, he crafted a life on his terms, one rooted in simplicity, independence, and healing. And in that stillness, he found something greater than justice, purpose. When he received a letter from a military spouse in Texas, thanking him for exposing the scam that nearly cost her family their home, it hit him. His pain had protected others. His heartbreak had saved lives. And that is the quiet power of doing the right thing, even when it would be easier to walk away. The lesson here is profound. Not all betrayals are obvious. Not all villains wear masks. Sometimes the people who harm us most are the ones who once held our hearts. And when that happens, it's easy to give in to rage or collapse under the weight of grief. But Logan's story shows us another way. You don't have to shout to be strong. You don't have to strike back to win. You don't have to destroy others to rebuild yourself. Sometimes, the most powerful response to betrayal is rising, quietly, steadily, and completely, into a life that no one can steal from you again. So, if you're struggling right now, if you've been broken by someone you trusted, remember this. Your strength is not in how loudly you fight, but in how wisely you rise. Build your life again, piece by piece. Protect your peace. Live with integrity, and know that the calm you fight for today can become someone else's hope tomorrow. Here's a question for you. If you were in Logan's shoes, what would you have done first? A. Confront Claire and demand answers. B. Stay silent and gather evidence, like Logan did. Comment your answer A or B below, and let us know why. Your perspective might inspire someone else who's going through something similar. What do you think of Logan's story? Would you have made different choices? Do you believe forgiveness is possible after betrayal like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments so others can learn from your experience and maybe share their own. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you something to think about, subscribe to the channel. It's your support that helps us keep telling stories that matter. Stories of betrayal, of survival, of rising, quietly but powerfully, just like Logan did.